When my boss, Mr. Daniels, told me I wasn't ready for a promotion, I didn't say a word. I just smiled. It was the same forced smile I had worn for the past 3 years, the kind you put on when you've been dismissed one too many times. I had worked late nights, fixed his mistakes, handled his angry clients, and covered for his careless decisions more times than I could count. And yet, every single review cycle, the same thing happened. He'd pat my shoulder, say I was almost there, and give the promotion to someone else. Usually a man who joined 6 months ago and barely knew how to log into the company portal. The day he said those words again, I already had my resignation letter typed, signed, and ready. I had been offered a position at another firm, one that actually valued my work. But when I walked into his office to submit it, he didn't even look up from his laptop. "You're leaving?" he said casually, like I had just told him I was going to grab lunch. Then he chuckled, leaned back, and said, "Good luck out there, Brianna. You're not ready for leadership here, but maybe you'll learn something wherever you go." The way he said it, so certain, so smug, it stung more than I wanted to admit. I had spent years proving myself in that office. The sleepless nights, the skipped holidays, the countless presentations I'd written under someone else's name. But that moment, it flipped a switch inside me. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. For the first time, I saw exactly what kind of man he was. Someone who needed to keep others small just to feel tall. And I realized I had been playing his game for far too long. I walked out of his office quietly, letter in hand, but I didn't hand it over. Not yet. I could hear his laughter behind me, low and satisfied, like he had just won something. That sound stayed with me all day. I sat at my desk, staring at the resignation email I had drafted, my cursor blinking over the send button. My friends at work knew about my offer. They were waiting for the big farewell announcement. But something in me hesitated, not because I wanted to stay, but because I suddenly wanted him to see what he had thrown away. By 6 p.m., most of the office was empty. I deleted my resignation draft, shut down my computer, and quietly slipped the signed letter into my drawer. If he thought I wasn't ready, I was going to show him exactly what ready looked like, but not with words, with results. I decided then that my silence would be louder than his arrogance. By the next morning, I walked into the office with a calmness that even surprised me. Mr. Daniels greeted me with that same smug half-smile, assuming I'd either left my notice on his desk or emailed it overnight. When he saw I hadn't, a faint wrinkle formed between his brows. "Still here?" he asked casually, sipping his coffee. "Didn't think you'd change your mind so soon." I smiled back, just enough to confuse him. "Oh, I didn't change my mind," I said. "I just realized there's something I need to finish first." He nodded dismissively, thinking I meant my workload. But I wasn't talking about my files. I was talking about something bigger. The company was about to launch its biggest client project of the year, a contract worth over $7 million. I had been the one building the proposal, coordinating between departments, managing the data, and rewriting the pitch deck every time Mr. Daniels wanted to add his touch. He was set to present it next week, standing on that stage with a fake confident smile, claiming credit for months of my effort. And I had planned to leave before that, just to avoid the anger of watching him take my work again. But now I decided I'd stay, just long enough to turn his big moment into something unforgettable. Over the next few days, I worked quietly. No complaints, no comments. I let him think I had accepted my fate. Every time he made a snide remark about how leadership requires patience, I just nodded. Every time he accidentally erased my edits, I restored them without a word. But behind that calm silence, I was documenting everything. Every message, every revision, every meeting record, with timestamps and version histories. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it out of necessity. I knew the truth wasn't enough unless it could be proven. Meanwhile, the hiring manager from the company that had offered me the new role kept calling. They were eager for me to join, even offered to move my start date forward. But I politely asked for one more week. "Something's about to happen here," I said vaguely, "and I need to see it through." She laughed and said, "You sound like you're planning a movie scene." I smiled because, in a way, I was. By Friday, the pressure in the office was thick. The project deck was finalized, and Mr. Daniels had started bragging about his vision to upper management. Everyone was stressed except me, because while he thought I was still his silent, obedient assistant, I was finalizing a separate version of the presentation, the original one, with all the credit. Notes and timestamps linked directly to my name. It wasn't revenge. It was proof. And when the day of the presentation arrived, I knew I wouldn't need to say a single word. The truth would do all the talking for me. The day of the presentation arrived like the calm before a storm. The conference hall was buzzing with executives, investors, and department heads, everyone waiting to hear about the company's biggest project of the year. Mr. Daniels stood near the stage, rehearsing his speech with that fake charm he wore like a tailored suit. I watched from a distance, holding the printed copy of the presentation in my hands. It wasn't the version he was expecting. It was the one that actually told the truth. An hour before the meeting, I was called into the boardroom. "Brianna," Mr. Daniels said, straightening his tie, "make sure the slides are updated on the main drive. I don't want any mistakes today." His tone carried that same condescension, as if I couldn't be trusted to handle something simple. I nodded and went straight to the control room. He didn't notice that I uploaded my version instead of his. When the meeting started, the lights dimmed, and the first slide appeared on the massive screen. Project Horizon, Concept and Development, led by Brianna Carter. The room went silent. Mr. Daniels froze mid-sentence. I sat near the back, expression calm, watching as his confident voice faltered. One of the senior executives tilted his head. "Wait," he said, looking at the slide. "I thought this was your project, Daniels?" The man stuttered, tried to laugh it off. But the next slide appeared. Detailed version history, tracked contributions, and internal communication logs showing my name over 90% of the edits. Research and design. The room murmured with confusion. Then realization. My colleagues, who had silently watched me do all the work for months, exchanged glances, some smiling subtly, others just stunned. Mr. Daniels's face went pale. This must be a mistake," he said, voice trembling slightly. But the head of the department wasn't buying it. "It doesn't look like a mistake," she replied sharply. "These records are automated. They don't lie." I stayed seated, quiet. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look his way. The truth was doing everything for me. When the presentation ended, the CEO himself stood up. "Brianna," he said from across the room, "would you step forward?" I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I walked to the front, the spotlight sharp but strangely comforting. "It seems we've been misinformed about who's really leading this project," he continued. "Excellent work. Truly impressive." I looked at Mr. Daniels, who couldn't even lift his eyes. That same man who said I wasn't ready for leadership was now standing silently in the background while the board discussed my future. I didn't smile, not even then. I just said softly, "Thank you." I only did what was expected. The CEO nodded and asked to meet me privately after the session. As I left the room, I heard someone whisper, "She's the one who should have been promoted months ago." And for the first time, I felt seen. Not as an assistant, not as a backup, but as someone who finally owned her work. When the presentation ended, I walked back to my desk in complete silence. My hands were steady, but inside, my heartbeat was drumming like it was echoing down the hallway. The entire office had gone quiet, the kind of silence that happens right before gossip explodes. People were whispering in corners, stealing glances my way. A few smiled as I passed, some out of admiration, others because they loved seeing Mr. Daniels finally get what he deserved. He was in his glass office, pacing, face red, phone pressed to his ear. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know it wasn't going well. Minutes later, HR called me upstairs. The same HR manager who once told me to be patient when I complained about unfair treatment now smiled as if we were old friends. "The CEO wants to discuss your future here," she said, voice overly sweet. "It seems your name's come up for a new leadership position." I thanked her politely, though every word felt surreal. For years, I'd watched others take credit for my work, and now suddenly, I was the one being offered a seat at the table. When I entered the CEO's office, he gestured for me to sit. "Brianna," he began, "I owe you an apology. You've clearly been carrying this team for a while, and that presentation made it very clear. He glanced at the file on his desk. Mr. Daniels is currently under review for ethical misconduct. In the meantime, I'd like you to step in as acting project director. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just looked out the window. The city stretched endlessly below, bright and busy. A reminder of how small I had once felt in this giant place. "Thank you," I finally said. "I'll do my best." He smiled. "Something tells me your best will be more than enough." As I left the office, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the hiring manager at the other company, the one whose offer I had delayed. "Hope everything's okay. Just checking if you're ready to start Monday." I looked at the screen, then at the door to Mr. Daniels' office where I could still hear muffled arguing. For a brief second I thought about walking away anyway, but then I remembered his words. "You're not ready for leadership." That's when it hit me. Leaving now would mean he was right, that I was running away instead of rising above. So I typed back, "Actually, I'll have to decline." Something came up. I hit send and leaned back in my chair, a quiet satisfaction washing over me. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was growth. That evening, as I packed my things to head home, I saw him walking out, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding everyone. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. For a man who always had something to say, his silence was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. I didn't gloat or smirk. I simply watched him leave, then turned back to my desk. For the first time in years, it felt like my space, and I wasn't going anywhere. The following week, everything in the office felt different, lighter somehow, though the walls were the same, the routines unchanged. People greeted me with new respect, some with genuine warmth, others with the kind of nervous politeness reserved for someone they'd once underestimated. I didn't let it go to my head. I simply did what I'd always done, worked hard, stayed calm, and let my results speak louder than any office rumor. The difference now was that people were finally listening. Mr. Daniels, however, was nowhere to be seen. Word spread quickly that he had been placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew it was over for him. The same man who once strutted across the floor, criticizing every small detail, had disappeared quietly. No farewell, no announcement, just gone. There was no satisfaction in his downfall, only peace, because deep down, I hadn't wanted to destroy him. I just wanted to stop letting him destroy me. My first week as acting director was a blur. Meetings, deadlines, strategy calls. All things I had already been doing for years, except now my name was on the door. The CEO would often stop by to check in, and each time he did, he'd say something encouraging. "You've got a natural sense of leadership," he told me once, smiling. Funny how long it took us to notice. I smiled back, though part of me still couldn't believe it had taken public humiliation for anyone to see what I'd been capable of all along. The Friday, as I was wrapping up, my phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. "Still think you weren't ready?" the message read. I didn't need to guess who it was. I looked at the text for a moment, then placed my phone face down on the desk. There was nothing left to say. Some lessons speak for themselves. I walked to the window, the sunset stretching gold across the skyline, the city glowing with the kind of quiet promise that used to intimidate me. I thought back to every late night, every ignored idea, every time I'd been told to wait my turn. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. As I packed up to leave, one of the junior analysts stopped by my desk. "Brianna," she said softly, "thank you for what you did. You showed all of us that it's okay to stand up without shouting." I smiled. "That's the thing about silence," I said. "If you use it right, it can be louder than any speech." I turned off the lights, locked my office, and walked out with my head high. The building that once made me feel invisible now echoed with my footsteps. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, I finally allowed myself to smile. Not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of freedom. Because I didn't just cancel my notice, I rewrote my story.